I'm Laura Smith. Welcome to my pollinator garden. Now, if you look around, it may not look that attractive to us, but it looks very attractive to all the pollinators and other wildlife. And that is my goal and my intention. And so I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how I've incorporated native plants into my pollinator garden. So there's a symbiotic relationship between the plants that grow here naturally and the organisms that live here naturally. So we want to help promote our pollinator population as well as other native species. And so by planting natives, we can really be successful at bringing them into our landscape. We get a wide variety of pollinators here. And one of the things that we do, what I try to do, is to add natives that will bloom in succession. So we just had our bulbs blooming, and now we're starting to get some other natives coming up and blooming, and we want blooms to last the entire growing season so that pollinators have something to eat the entire growing season. And sometimes you have to supplement that with plants like magnolias or forsythias or something, but our main focus is try to get native plants as much as possible. Natives are a great way to plant because it gives you that biodiversity. Unlike a grass, which is a monoculture, your lawn does not have much biodiversity and is not really good for wildlife. That's not true for a garden like this, where we're introducing a lot of different plants as well as a lot of different organisms. We want to make sure that we're planting in big drifts of native plants. This happens to be some dianthus. They've already come up, and that is great for the pollinators because it gives them a lot of area to work with. It's also great for you as a gardener because there's one mass of the same plant. One thing about natives is sometimes it's tricky to know what you're deciding is a native and what is a weed. And to keep those two separate is not always easy. And so with our native plantings, we want to make sure a lot of them aren't up yet. And so we want to make sure when they come up that we don't inadvertently pull them as if they're a weed. A lot of natives also are self-sowers. So for instance, this plant here is a milkweed plant, a swamp milkweed, and it grew here even though I had planted it in the backyard, in the back of that garden. And so it had self-sowed here. I let it grow through the season because the butterflies were enjoying it, and then I will move it this spring when it gets a little more green to it to the location where I wanted it, because you want to make sure that you have height that works for you. You don't want tall things in the front and shorter things in the back when you're planting things. Native plants are hard to grow from seed. You can be successful, but if you're just starting, that's not what I would start with. I would start with plants. Bench's Greenhouse has a wide variety of native plants, and there's other online sources for native plants as well. They're good for the environment because they are suited for our environment. It's the right zone, it's the right temperature, it's the right moisture. They're here, they're going to help with erosion, they're going to help with water control. They're doing all those good things that we want to do. We don't have to worry about herbicides and pesticides like we would with a lawn. And so again, that's a great thing for the environment, and it encourages other wildlife. We need to be sure that we recognize that they're like any other plant. They're going to take a lot of space as they get older and older, and you want to make sure as they're maturing that you have the space that you want for that particular plant. At some point you may have to pull them back a little bit and help make sure that they're not overpowering another plant that's trying to grow in that space. That's especially tricky this time of year when plants are just coming up. I have some little white markers to help remind me of where I've planted specific plants so I don't inadvertently allow another plant to take that spot. We have yet to put the mulch down. That is one of the things that is important in any kind of garden. But the mulch also helps with the weed control, moisture, and temperature. And we've established, like we would in any garden, we've established some focal points and a path to go through. Our path happens to be creeping thyme. That blends in really well with native plants and is a really tough plant that you can walk on. There's other options as well, but that's one we have. And I've added some evergreen plants in as well because you want to think about that 4-year or 4-season look, that it looks nice all year round. These gardens can be a little untidy, and that's intentional. I don't do a really hard fall cleanup here. I allow all the plants to go to seed because that's food for a lot of organisms. I allow the stalks to remain because many insects will nest in things like a coneflower stalk. And we just now cut them down last week, those stalks, and we actually put them in the back of the garden so that in case there were insects that hadn't come out of hibernation yet, they still have that opportunity. There's still lots of leaves and mulch. That's protecting those tender plants, and it's also allowing those nutrients to help out with our soil. And in time we'll be mulching sooner rather than later, because it's easier to mulch around things like the native plants before they get too big. Otherwise it could be a harder task. I've really enjoyed my pollinator garden. I hope that, and we've gotten lots of different pollinators here. I hope that there'll be another time where I can show you it in process, maybe show you at different times what the pollinator garden looks like. I garden with native plants because I think it's what's best for the environment. I think it's what's best for plants and other organisms, and I want to promote and do what's right instead of planting everything in lawns. Again, it brings me a lot of pleasure, and there's a lot of interest all year round. Thank you.